Okay, hi there, it's Jeff here with a revision video looking at the concept of the Laffer Curve. Now, the Laffer Curve is a theoretical idea, beloved of particularly free market economists. They basically believe that if you cut taxes, if you cut the burden of tax as a way of stimulating work incentives, as a way of stimulating entrepreneurship, you ultimately get faster growth in an economy, and faster growth generates more tax revenue. So cutting taxes can actually lead to more tax revenue. Conversely, if the tax burden becomes too high, you might end up with less tax revenue than you had before. So what does the Laffer Curve try to show? A supposed relationship. The econometric evidence isn't that strong between economic activity and the rate of taxation. The idea is there might be some sort of optimal tax rate which brings in the most revenue for the government. So how do we draw and explain the Laffer Curve? Well, on the y-axis we have the total tax revenue coming in dollars or pounds, and on the x-axis the tax rate, the burden of tax as a percentage. Low tax on the left-hand side, in theory 0, but not in reality. High taxes on the right-hand side on the x-axis, again in theory 100%, but not really, not something we should really consider. So that's the often drawn shape of the Laffer Curve. At low tax rates, if we increase the tax rate from T1 to T2, we might get more tax revenue. We're moving up the Laffer Curve. In many low-income emerging market countries, the tax burden as a share of GDP is extremely low, perhaps 10-15% of national income. And in many ways, the economy is not generating enough tax revenue to pay for basic public services like education, healthcare, transport, social services, welfare. Now, T3, in theory, might be considered optimal if the objective of a government is to maximise the total amount of tax coming in. But the Laffer Curve theorists argue that if you raise taxes too high, to T4, for example, that might lead to a fall in tax revenues. So the Laffer Curve basically says if you lift taxes too high, you might end up with less revenue. So why might that be the case? Well, one is tax avoidance. When taxes are high, there is a greater financial incentive to look for all the allowances, all the tax reliefs, all the little loopholes, legal loopholes that you can use to avoid paying tax. A good example in the UK recently has been the debate over non-dom status, the taxation of overseas income for people living in a country. Of course, if there's a higher tax burden, there is an incentive perhaps to evade tax, which is illegal. Tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion is illegal through the non-declaration of income or the non-declaration of your wealth. So it happens to both people and businesses. And of course, money then moves into the hidden or shadow economy. Another argument is that higher taxes can have a disincentive effect in the labour market. So if you raise the burden of income tax or national insurance, there might be an increase in economic inactivity, people who are working age, but who aren't necessarily looking for work. And there's also a possibility of a brain drain effect, that if you raise the tax burden high, you could get net outward migration of high-skilled, high-income people, high-net-worth individuals who leave a country or move their money offshore, or both, seeking lower tax liabilities. Now, okay, these are plausible arguments. The obvious point is a Keynesian argument. If you raise the burden of tax, people have less income, therefore they spend less. So you get less in indirect tax revenues and corporation tax. So there's the Laffer Curve, and you can certainly use it in an exam. I would use it actually the question on tax avoidance. The exam boards quite like students who shift the curve. So if you can bring in successful tax avoidance measures, which the UK government and others have been trying to do, particularly given the tax avoidance used by multinational corporations, including profit shifting, for example, and transfer pricing. Tax avoidance, if successful, can lift or shift the Laffer Curve upwards. So if we take T3, for example, at that tax rate, you now get more money coming in than you did before. So you don't necessarily have to draw it just to make a simple argument. Use the Laffer Curve on a tax avoidance question. And also fiscal drag. So you see what's happened in the UK in recent times. The UK government has basically frozen the amount of money you can earn each year before you're paying income tax. I think it's about £11,570 or something like that. Now, they've frozen tax allowances for, I think, 5 years. So as people earn more and spend more, but particularly when they earn more, and during the cost of living crisis, people's wages have been going up. Suddenly they start paying more in tax because they move from paying no tax to 20%, or paying 20% on income to 40%. So you're moving between tax boundaries. Tax fiscal drag is when you get dragged into paying higher taxes because you move into a higher tax band. And the evidence is, by the way, this is bringing in tens of billions of pounds extra over the period. So fiscal drag can also have the same effect as successful tax avoidance measures. There we go. That was a quick look, a revision look for you on the Laffer Curve. And thanks for joining in.